Unbelievable. 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 Listen, I just for the record, I have ADHD. And I took my medication this morning and that did not work. Hi, my name is Joshua. I'm the technical guy behind the camera. I screwed up. We're starting 10 minutes late. Jay has his hand up, their hand up, so I'm going to pick on them next. But apologies for forgetting. Jay, go ahead, please unmute.
No, that was not for a hand up. That was just a clapping for you, and it's all good.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
All right. So sorry about that.
Okay.
Back to you guys.
All right.
So
my brain went.
We
That's
were
okay,
talking about knowledge and experience, and can
Yeah.
you have one without the other, right?
Right.
And do you often have one without the other? And are there any sort of, I guess,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you can. I don't know that you can have wisdom. I don't think wisdom comes like in a bottle, like, oh, look, it's wisdom. Let me just have some. Like, I don't think it works like that.
I wish.
Right. Right.
But you know, on my pillow.
I agree though when you said that knowledge without experience is dry, but I also think about like perspective based knowledge, right? Of like when I hear from different people, there's like this buildup of like, oh, so I know it in the eyes of different individuals. And maybe that experience is that next evolvement of like what my knowledge is. But I feel like maybe that's where the dryness goes away, right? Is like I can sit with others and say, like, tell me about your mind of like, what about this topic, right? And diving deeper into that as well.
No, I wonder if we would consider conversations with other people more experience than knowledge, or a hybrid of the two, right? Because you're acquiring knowledge by listening to other people, but you're also having experience of interacting with another person.
I also think you're processing, which is creating wisdom, because then you're looking at how you've applied this knowledge and how you've lived the experience, which is now wisdom.
I mean, we can very simply learn by that, right? And to take it down into the most simplest form, I can watch you burn your hand on the stove and know that that's not for me, right? Like,
or curiosity.
Or curiosity could be, and I'd be like, oh, I love that sensation. Let's do it again.
Can we say something for a second?
Say that one more time, please.
Can we say something? Okay.
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Hold on, we're trying to figure out the camera. Oh, there it goes. Hey guys.
Hey, okay, it's our time talking.
Outside. What's talking?
No, I'm not.
Sorry.
Got little ones running around.
All good.
All right, so I would say, and Josh, you know this because of our background, knowledge, wisdom, and experience wisdom. Learning something and experiencing it, lessons learned is the wisdom. What lessons did you learn? And if you didn't learn them, you're going to repeat those same experiences, even if you know about this stuff. Someone going to college just to get a degree is knowledge. They never apply it. They're not getting that experience out of it.
Right.
But the biggest one that I can relate is lessons learned. And you can learn, I don't say you have to do those sequentially. You can have wisdom and never get that knowledge, that direct hand knowledge, because you learn from somebody else's mistakes or their successes. But experience is the best teacher too, sometimes, most of the time.
Thank you. Next we have Jax and then V. Thank you, Jax.
Hi. I was thinking, like, when you guys were talking, I guess I never thought of it like this. I feel like for me, one of the things I think of when I think of wisdom and being wise is knowing when you need to learn from experiences and when to learn from like book knowledge or from like the more intellectual standpoint. And I feel like the wisdom comes in knowing what you need in order to gain different perspectives and how you can take in knowledge and intellect and experiences from everything you have built upon in each individual way. And I think the most wise people, or when I look at wise, are the people who are able to know how and when to do that and when to build upon it in different manners.
I like that. The word that came to mind as you were talking, Jax, was discernment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Wisdom has a certain degree of discernment involved with it because you can tell good from bad. Like you can extract from knowledge and experience to decide things, to be able to know aspects of things, or discernment, to be able to discern.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Better
no,
word.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Interesting, because I think sometimes we hold knowledge, wisdom, and all of those components in our brain. And I think sometimes we need to like unravel them from our head and hear it, exchange them with someone else to really comprehend them. I don't know if anybody has ever felt like you've known the answer to your questions, hopes and dreams or wonders or whatever, but sometimes it takes for you to really just say them, to verbalize them, for your brain to process them, for you to say, oh, that's right, shit, that's how that is or whatnot. It's something that I've come across in the last couple of weeks, as I'm recovering my mind. I've dealt with some long COVID, and so I've been collecting a lot of information that I have not been receptive of, and I have not been able to process or recollect. And as those symptoms have digressed, I have access to information that I did not know I had. It's funny, but it's sort of trapped. So I don't know if anybody has ever felt that, where they say like, just sort of like just talking it over to someone else, with someone else, you feel like you've been able to like break the code of your own wisdom and knowledge and everything that lives in your head.
Yeah, I that reminds me of what Josh was just talking about the idea of processing, right? Like that's what happens for me when I get to talk things out with someone, as you just said, as opposed to just letting it play in my head all by myself. There's a forward motion that comes from being able to speak with another person and hear even just to be have space held for me and be heard and be able to just hear myself speak, brings forth, I think, wisdom sometimes out of both knowledge and experience.
There's something about saying it out loud too, to yourself or to somebody else who's holding a safe space for you, and you're allowed to say whatever you want. And I know that's been really true for me. So yeah, for sure, the out loud processing. And I wonder if that's like a specific thing for us, or a lot of people really go through that,
Yeah, I was thinking through that too, though, right? Because like I've just recently gone through that, like having like not a great experience, but like it felt bad to me. But then when I vocalized it, it was almost like, oh, I found the power behind why that bad thing happened. But it was through that articulation as well.
Yeah.
Would you be comfortable sharing?
Sure. So I had a coworker that I was really close with, and he ended up leaving the company, and I ended up having a really bad day. I had to fire someone, not him, but I had to fire someone, and he's like, hey, how about we hang out? And the long story short is he made me wait an hour and a half for him. And I sat in my car and I was like, wow, I'm really giving of my time. And by the time we hit the restaurant and like we were in, he was like, actually, I'm feeling kind of tired. I'm going to head out. I've never experienced anger like to the degree that it was so outward towards somebody that I cared for. And so I was like, hey, check this out. Like, I want people in my life. You're not someone I want there. And to say that and have this firm boundary, and I almost left without experiencing. And I went back in and I had a drink and I had a moment to just sit with myself to say, I came out to experience. But like when I came home and sat with it, I was like, I don't value my time. Like, I'm so willing to give my time to someone and not set the boundary of it's delicate, like it's mine.
Sure.
And that if I'm sharing it with you, it means I care. So when I sat down with it, I was like, I was conflicted of should I be mad? And I almost felt bad that I was angry, and then sat with myself. And when I vocalized it with everyone that's here, it was like, oh no, hell yeah. Like I was meant to be mad. And it was like a grounding of, hey, check this out. This experience never gonna happen again. It doesn't matter who it's with.
Right.
Yeah.
And now you're tying boundaries. I'm sorry, Josh.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, now you're tying boundaries into wisdom, right? Like wisdom moving forward is you're not, you've set this boundary so that people don't take advantage of your time in this way. And how beautiful, right? And every time we exercise a boundary, the first time you do it, it's like the first time you work out and you're like, oh my God, my muscles. And it's like, so, for me, at least, I'll speak from my perspective, right? It's like almost terrifying when you're not used to setting boundaries. And then you do it and you do it again and you do it again. And you just pull from that same strength and that same wisdom and you're able to kind of protect yourself moving forward. I think that's beautiful. I'm glad that you said your piece.
Yeah.
That's great.
Pretty badass.
Thank you. We have Tango with his hand up.
Oh.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, it's just interesting on the speaking out loud part. Going back to it's about communication, because every time you think to yourself, you already have a clear understanding, both sides, because you're one-sided, but you're thinking the same thoughts, you're listening, even if you're having a conversation in your head. It's not until you vocalize it do you actually have to kind of relate what it is and make sure that people can comprehend it, on top of even historical, or going back, knowing somebody's name, being able to pronounce a name, or gave you power or gave power to other people through knowing them. And you can know them in your head, it doesn't mean anything. It's when you vocalize it, when you make it a reality, it changes from thought to physical form. Good thought.
Thank you so much for that. I also wanted to say hi to Jay, who's tuning in from Germany. Jay posted at 6:02, and I wanted to give you a shout out. Welcome and staying up for late to join us.
Yeah, it's late. In Germany. Yeah, no, it's funny, as I was thinking, as both you were talking, and then as Tango was just talking, that it went right out of my head, so never mind.
Boundaries and experience.
Boundaries and experience. There was something about, well,
It's come back. Just cut us off.
if it's important, it'll come back.
That's how it works.
So does anybody have anything else they want to share? We can go to the questions.
I think there was something powerful in what you just said, though, Tango. It's the way that somebody comprehends your voice too, right? Like,
oh yeah,
when you bark back, right? Like, this is my boundary. It's almost like, how is it being reciprocated, other than like, you hurt my feelings, right? Or like, are you reciprocating it as like, oh, I made a mistake, right? Like, those are two very variable decisions that you have to weigh out for yourself. So I really heard that when you shared, because I think that was where my pain sat.
It's funny because we had a conversation earlier. Another friend was here and we talked about I'm sorry and I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. It sounds like that's exactly it. It's the difference between I'm sorry you feel bad and I'm sorry because I did something that I need to own.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like one is like, sorry about your feelings. Like, so too bad about your luck. Right. And then the other one is like, oh, I recognize that I have a part to play. And it's like, I hurt you in some way. Yeah. And
yeah.
So like that. The other thing I remembered what I was going to say before, based on what Tango said, was, like for me, my wiring is not exactly right and hasn't been like my whole life and probably won't ever be. So my wisdom, my lived experience comes from understanding that I will always need to check what I think against other people's feedback. Like I can have my own experiences and my own whatever, but like when I'm not sure, there's a good chance that one of the pack of liars that lives in my head is probably telling me a story. And my best way out of that is to just share with the people who are close to me and have them either say to me, yeah, Mary, you're right. You had every reason to be mad at that guy. Or Kat, you sound a little crazy. You might want to rethink that. That's my learned life experience, my wisdom, as it were, for like what I need to do to stay balanced and to stay, honest.
It's that atypical though, because as you were talking, I was just thinking about this. We're sliding. We're sliding. So we're back.
And we're live.
But I was gonna say that there's what someone is speaking almost always traditionally, right? There's what I'm speaking and what you're hearing, right? So that's another thing. And I have experienced this like in our conversations where you have to ask and bounce, and I'm like, oh yeah, but I do the same thing as well. And I don't know, like, where does that come from? You know what I mean? Is it a need for clarification, or is it a validation thing? Is it an imposter syndrome thing? I don't know. We could get very deep on that. Anyway, sorry.
And then, I mean, of course, then that just back ends into, is it communication or the topic?
Right.
We could talk about communication for the rest of the hour.
I'm dancing out of my square. Dancing right off the dance floor. And there I go.
But ultimately, it sounds like you're breaking it down to like, are you accountable? Or are you responsible? Right? Like,
say more about that.
Like, are you accountable for hurting my feelings, or are you responsible for hurting my feelings? Right? Like, because if you feel accountable for that, you're going to make some action to like kind of do that. But like, if you're responsible for it, like you may it may come back to you. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking out.
I don't. I'm trying to.
There sounded like there was something in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's a difference of like knowing you hurt my feelings or saying sorry to just say sorry to me. And then there's a responsibility of saying you're sorry to me because I did this and like holding your own. And maybe it's like the vice of that for me. But like what I'm trying to think of is like there's like this breakup, right, between the two. And so kind of curious if anyone else is hearing that too, right? Of like what is that responsibility?
Yeah, no, for sure. I had a hard time with the two words that you used, but I think that's the point of it. Like in one case, we're just almost paying lip service to understanding that the other person feels bad. In the other case, we're owning, having responsibility, accountability for what we did.
For sure.
And I think that, you know, that's two different kinds of people, honestly.
Yeah. And taking the accountability isn't apologizing so that when I hurt you, I feel better when you forgive me. It's actually like I'm truly repentant.
And then I wonder what knowledge and experience they have that lended into how they responded back. Looping it back. Looping it back.
We'll get back on this topic.
Strong dance lead. Strong dance lead.
So one of the questions here that we can kick around for a minute is, can wisdom be gained solely through personal experience, or is external guidance necessary for wisdom?
Hold on, V had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
It says there are different schools of thought behind your question. Some say others are, and others say it is us who are accountable for allowing others to getting to us.
Say more.
Oh.
Yeah. Would you be open to sharing more?
Say more about that?
V got disconnected.
Oh no.
V said, I'm gonna drop this in and then bounce out and leave you guys curious.
Peace out. Yeah.
Just
That's all right.
mic dropping.
Yeah.
So
Maybe
I
she'll
guess
come back.
yeah, pick it up from where you're at and
Maybe she'll come back.
These
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, no,
These guys think.
I know.
oh yeah, please at any time, guys,
Please,
feel
like,
free to jump in and throw some knowledge back.
Yeah.
Or
I
wisdom.
think it's more, you know, just what it sounded like he was saying is that it's, you know, we have to accept our own reactions, our own accountability for whatever we do. So if we are sorry, you know, or whatever it is, I totally agree with it. I'm sorry, I am sorry. And however you put the intonation into it, it would cause it to be a different word or different meaning. But I think what he was saying before it dropped was really this is, you know, your own responsibility for taking accountability, not looking for somebody else to take ownership for you. Maybe. We'll find out when he gets back.
Yeah, what she meant by that when she gets back. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, not to belabor this particular topic, but I think, at least in the world that I come from, saying I'm sorry doesn't mean anything. When you've genuinely done something, you've done something that's been harmful. Like maybe I didn't know it. You come to me and you say, hey, Kat, you know, when you did this thing or said this thing, it hurt my feelings or whatever, like, you know, whatever the thing is, right? Then I can either hear that and go one of a couple of ways. But if I genuinely can see the harm that I've done, and I am sorry not to overuse the word, but then the word that I know is amends. I have to amend my behavior. What am I going to do so that I don't do that to you again going forward? Like, because saying I'm sorry does nothing to say that I won't do it again. Like, I won't just keep right on doing what I'm doing, but like, what am I going to do different? And that's what you can bring to the person. Okay, great. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I feel really bad about that. And I'm going to do X. Like, you can hold me accountable when I tell you that I'm going to do X, Y, or Z so that I don't hurt you again.
So Intellectual Daddy has his hand up and then V has rejoined us. So let's Intellectual Daddy jump on first and then V, we invite you back to answer for your statement.
Yeah, thank you.
I agree, Kat. Every time I've ever made a mistake or anything like that, and the person let me know, first I apologize, and then my next question was, what can I do to help make this right? Because it's action. If I don't see action in myself or other people, I'm sorry, it's just words. It don't mean anything. It's like shit or fuck or whatever. It's just a word. But when you see actions behind the words, that's what's important.
Agreed.
That's why I always wait with my vetting, I wait for at least 6 months to a year, sometimes longer, so I can see a pattern develop in the people. So I know what is what. Because people will say one thing, but they'll do another.
Listen, when I'm that person, one of the things that I understand is if I've hurt you in some way and I'm taking responsibility for that, you have no reason to trust me anymore, right? So one of the things I have to do is also allow you time to be around me to see that the changes that I'm making are real, and I can't blame you for not trusting me right away. Like, you get to come back to me on your own time because I'm the offending party, right? And it's understanding
walking out the process of forgiveness. You have to walk it out, and it doesn't always feel good.
But I think it comes back to that processing point, right? Of like, hey, we had this interaction, but like, why did I respond that way? Or like, why did we experience this together? And like, where did that come from? Right. And like tying that back to like, maybe in my experience, those things didn't have that type of reaction in like those things, but like being able to cater it. Right. So I really respect that you shared that too. Thank you.
Yeah.
So V's back.
Welcome back, V.
V, you had left a question in the chat or a statement, and we weren't all sure what it meant, and then you weren't here, so we were like waiting for you to come back to say more.
I left behind confusion behind. I know that I'm so sorry. I did not catch your name, honey. But I know you stated who was responsible for hurting our feelings. Was it our responsibility to manage those emotions, or was the accountability factor onto the other person? Who was in charge of that accountability? That's how I perceived that statement or question. And I was responding to that. And I said there's two schools of thought behind that. One is that we are accountable for allowing others' emotions to affect us, regardless of how mean or gross the other person is. And obviously, there's also that accountability factor that you should just be you should not be a piece of shit in this world, basically. So that was my analogy, you know. Saying
don't be a piece
said
of shit,
smoothly.
Mary.
Yeah, right.
This comes down. This is the don't be a dick.
But I think you said something really powerful too. Of like, we're only accountable, like we're only responsible for what we bring to that.
Yes.
Right. Of like, I can't force somebody else to like feel bad because you hurt my feelings. Like that's, I think there's a piece of that too. But I love that perspective, because what I walked away from was like, how do I make this something I'm proud about? Right. Because instead of making it feel crappy. Right. But like, I really respect that, because I didn't look at it like that. I think I was more in the realm of like, he should feel bad.
You took the power.
That's
like,
Yeah.
I think that's what we're taught initially, apologize, you as a person of hurting somebody else's feelings, go apologize to that person. And now the person who was the victim feels better. They're allowing their experience to be driven by the other person's actions. However, I think as evolution has guided us, they state that we should be accountable for that. We have the right and the option, we have the right maturity and we've done all our growth type of thing, is that, are you really going to get other people in you that easily? Are you going to allow others to have that much control over you? And the best thing you can do in life is to never take anything personal, especially if it's coming from somebody you don't care about or doesn't care that much. I mean, if you're like best friend or somebody that's incredibly close to you, yeah, you're it's going to be hard to process that emotion of rejection. But I also think that there is a level of control that you can manage that will allow you to steer away that experience, where it's like, you can't do anything for that other person to be a better human being. Are you really going to allow that to affect you? Mm-hmm.
I think having big emotions around things is okay, right? Like if somebody really pisses you off, you have to allow that to happen. You can't just not react to somebody, right? But I think it's how you handle it and what you allow yourself to do and say, right? Because anger is not a problem. It's how you emote that. Or hurt feelings isn't a problem. It's how you react to that. I personally think, and it's really difficult to shut yourself completely down, like shut the fuse box completely down and not react to people unless you're completely disconnected. And there is a point where, like, if this person is saying something to me and like I don't care about you at all. Like, okay, have a nice day. You take care, Jill. Like, nice chat. But like, you know, if Kat says something to me that's really going to hurt me, I'm going to be like, hey, girl, that was some harsh language. Like that made me feel not so good. And I think we can say that to people that we're close to, especially those people. And okay, yes, I can control my reaction by not also reacting and being like completely angry and tearing you apart. But then this is the part where true relationships get built, because now you say something, you're free to be how you want to be and don't worry about if you're going to hurt my feelings or not. Then I communicate back to you about like, hey, and now we have the experience, right?
Yeah.
And knowledge that, oh, you're a trustworthy person to communicate to, and I can be my 100% authentic self in this scenario. And now I'm building a true relationship out of vulnerability instead of just not saying anything to you about the way that you treated me.
And not for nothing, this is lived experience.
Oh, lived experience. We've really hard conversations. Yes. We really have. And we have built this. So but
it's a really good point though, because like what you do with the feelings and how you handle yourself and the other, whatever the other person is in this case, has a lot to do with knowledge, wisdom, and experience. Like what is your life experience around this? What do you know about handling it? And having the wisdom to know when to, you know,
10 years ago, had you and I met, I mean, you know, you and I have known each other for almost 5 years now, I think 5 years. Yeah. Had we met, you know, more than a decade ago, I definitely wouldn't have been mature enough to walk through some of the conversations that we've walked through, right? So that again is like knowledge and experience. And experience tells me that, hey, when I bring something to Kat, it's going to be okay because she still really loves me. You know, and I can say the hard thing. We can disagree. We can have opposite opinions. Or if I need to apologize, I do that, right? Or vice versa.
So I have
some hands.
I have some hands up, and I have some things in the comments. Let me read the comments, and then we'll come to the hands. Intellectual Daddy said, yes, the person hurt and lost trust gets to decide when that's been earned back. And then Primal Connect, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and I teach people how to reclaim their power through somatic meditation practices that deliver emotional freedom. Getting rid of triggered emotional patterns is incredibly rewarding and helps us out of trouble. That was a Primal Connect. And then we have two hands. Jay was first, Jay, and then Tango.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add what you actually already said before. I think it was Bella Mia.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say that what we were talking about, that this is also the experience, knowledge, and wisdom. When you have something from a person, that experience, based on that experience, you have the knowledge that, okay, what is the person doing or whatever thing. And then based on that, you have the wisdom if you want to act on it or not.
Yeah.
And this is what comes with experience also. And about wisdom, I just feel, this is my personal opinion. I do not know if it is true or not, but I just feel there is a kind of collective wisdom as well. So wherever you are living, wherever you are, so there is some way we do not know what we were before saying, that somehow we know some information. We just have that information, but it somehow is there. But I feel it is like in our system, if we compare it to a computer, there is a folder which is as a hidden file, and over time with knowledge, you just know how can you open it, and then you have the information. So it was already there, but you just kind of rediscovered it. Yeah, that's all I wanted to share.
That's great.
I don't know.
I love that.
Thank you.
I like that.
I know. That's great.
Thank you, Jay. Tango, please.
Yeah, I was thinking about the list of different kind of talking points or thinking points you had there, and one of them really kind of stuck out as been thinking about how we gain knowledge and experience. I guess more knowledge with the advent of the internet and all the ways that people can consume our bite-sized information. How little we're actually learning from it, and the we're being exposed to more and more and more, we'll call it knowledge. For, we're picking one of the three. We're being exposed to more and more knowledge, but we are experiencing it far less and less and less. And so I don't think knowledge, the example that I bring up because I thought it was a really interesting one. I bet everybody in this room can go through and has read a top 10 list in the past month. But I think the ability for you to go back and name three things on that list, most people would have a hard time pulling it back. But it was knowledge. But if you're not going and buying it, if you're not making the muffins that looks amazing, if you're not actually doing this, that knowledge doesn't stick with you. So I think one of the things you talked about in that list was really about retaining knowledge. Part of it is through experience, and that might help. But would you really remember that you got it from this spot? You probably wouldn't. So I think it's really selective and really interesting to see how much knowledge is available and how little of it is really absorbed and comes our knowledge.
The word that came to mind for me as you were just saying that is the difference between information and knowledge. Right? Because information is just that, and all the things you were talking about what's on the internet and TikTok, and there's you're right, we're like deluged in a sea of information, but the acquisition of information in any sort of a systemic way of a knowledge is, I think, a little bit more specific and focused towards growth of some kind, or I can't get all the words, but there's a difference here between information and knowledge.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. That's
yeah, because you're right. We're swimming in a sea of information more than we ever have been, and I'm not sure how much knowledge, experience, or wisdom people have.
It sounds like what that you're both saying together comes to extracting knowledge from information. Right. So if you can remember those three, you've gained knowledge from that information.
Yes.
But the information's static. Awesome. Thank you, Tango.
Yeah, because I was thinking that when I have learned something, when I have gotten information and I do retain it, and then that feels like knowledge. It feels like something I then have in terms of what I know, right? If I just heard it and I can't remember it in 3 days, then I don't really know it. So it's not really knowledge.
And then the experience of executing it, of being actionable on that knowledge, gives you the wisdom of the knowledge, of the lived experience. So now it is yours. It's not just knowledge, but you've done it, right? You can say you've done it. It belongs to you.
Right. It's tangible, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, repetition's another whole thing.
Like those biscuits we were talking about just a minute ago.
Yeah.
Tell me more about the biscuits.
B?
Yeah, thank you. I want to say something to Kat. Kat, you actually think that the knowledge is not there, but it's in your subconscious. And it will come out when you need to access that information when you need to practice judgment. If you've lived an experience and it's inside you and you may not be able to recollect it through just saying it and repeating the emotion, that wisdom is in the back of your subconscious. You will not go back and become an infant and practice no common sense, but it lives in you. You may just have trouble remembering, but trust me, I am telling you from experience, it's there.
All right. I won't argue with that. I am, want to say to you that there's a plethora of information that has come and gone outside of this little head of mine. And trust me, when I tell you, some of it's just not here.
It is. You just don't care to practice.
No, there was a guy I used to work with. He would say, he was such a dick. He was funny though. He would say, "I've forgotten more than you'll ever learn."
That's the same.
Jax, please, Jack's hand.
Yeah.
So I was just wanting to caveat on the like knowledge versus where you're picking it up from, kind of, because I think it's interesting that for me, I have a previous life in the military, for example, and you're looking at the sergeant's realm and the officer realm, right? One of them goes to school and they learn through school while the others learn through experience. We don't need to have school or anything like that. And you can see how it can, without one, you can't have the other, and vice versa. We can have all this experience, but their knowledge without that, it would just be a mess. And on vice versa, on the other side of the officer's realm, they can come in with all of this knowledge that they've gained from all of these books, and they've gone to college for years and years, but without the ability to take from those with already having experience, and without the ability to have that experience themselves, it's not going to help get us anywhere. So I do think it's interesting. And I also feel like with that book knowledge, it's really easy to actually learn it and literally not know what you're learning, because you're not taking it in, versus when you're having that experience, it does stick somewhere, maybe not all of it, but you had to have lived it. So it has to have some type of platform in your body and your mind, versus just reading a book and hoping that you retain it. So I just find it interesting that like back and forth that does.
I would also, because I come from a background we had this conversation last night, strangely enough, at the dinner table.
Yes, we did.
But I come from a restaurant background, right? Like I've been in restaurants all my life, and there's people who come to management through school, having had no in the trenches experience, right? And then there's people who come up through the rank and file. And what I was thinking as you were talking is I might offer that wisdom comes from being able to know how to balance the two, knowing when is it appropriate to just draw from experience, and when do you need to have some book knowledge, some other knowledge to help with that, to help further the cause.
We have Primal Connect, who says experience is what you have 5 minutes after you needed it. Primal, do you want you want to say more?
Yeah, I mean, we sort of swim through life, and we get triggered, we react, we use intuition. It's all a bit like riding a bicycle, really. And occasionally we fall off the bicycle and we have to get back on and carry on. But I think it's important to note that sometimes we can mistake what you might call experience that is coming from buried trauma. So a fear of spiders, for example, might encapsulate some kind of family wisdom or tribal wisdom, but it may or may not be appropriate. And we need to learn about and filter our reactions, emotions, so that they start working favorably for us. I started my life in a children's home, and so I had serious trust issues, and my relationships would fail regularly because when I approached intimacy, all my alarm bells went off. And I had to do some work on that. And the place that really found me was doing some work in Tantra and the Betty Martin Wheel of Consent exercises, where I was able then to sort of reinterrogate my emotional responses to intimacy with a coach, and then start to filter out what was right and what wasn't right for me. But you start to gather that there's a really quite interesting and incredible journey to take, should you wish to, in order to find this truer version of self that we all crave. So that's what I'm saying. And when I do hypnotherapy with people, I give them a kind of set of gateway experiences to healing, which many people have found life-changing.
Thank you.
That's
incredible.
incredible.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Anyone wants to DM me, please do.
Yeah.
we had Jay hands up. And while we wait for Jay to jump back on, they wrote. Tango wrote, what gets you here, what won't get you there. And Jay said, I just wanted to add on about balance. Totally agree. If we make bread, we need flour, yeast, water, etc., etc. A proportion of all is needed. Similarly, we need balance of information, which is stored in synapses, and over repeated actions turn into memory, which turns into knowledge. And obviously, a combination of experience and knowledge is wisdom. So balance is key.
Well, our work here is done.
Yeah.
There it is. Profound.
Would you want to go ahead? I'm sorry, you were saying.
Some really profound points. I'm really,
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here.
Me too.
No, this is
About biscuits. Every week
Oh
we're
my
doing this.
God.
This is what we do every week.
Incredible conversations every week.
This is fantastic.
So thank you, all of you, for coming, right?
Yeah.
To do this, to participate, because the conversation is as rich as the people who turn their cameras on and contribute to the dialogue.
Share.
Yeah,
I
for
looked
sure.
a lot though. Like even tonight too, right? Like as I talked it out again, we were talking about like just speaking things out. But eventually someone's going to pay for experience, right? As I set a boundary for myself, like I can only experience something so much till I say, oh, I don't want to do that again. Right? Like, or hey, this doesn't align with who I want to be. Right. So like it's funny, as we jumped into that, I didn't think I would tie those two things together. But for me, I'm taking away so much to say, like, what is really what I've based off of what I've experienced versus what I know. And then like if I do know it, what's led me there, right? Like,
Yeah.
is it something tangible or is it something I just heard? So I don't know. I've learned a lot. So I was really excited to be part of this conversation. So.
And as I'm hearing you say it, it's almost like wisdom is that overarching sort of ability to discern the differences between what we know and what we experience and how they inform the decisions we want to make and the relationships we want to have with people and how we want to show up in the world. And
you said it so much better in so many words.
Oh.
So we have about 7 minutes left.
Really?
Yeah, this hour flew by. With that, do you want to move on to a question?
We can. I mean, these are just here to guide the. One of the questions that stuck out to me on this whole thing was how do personal beliefs and biases impact the acquisition or interpretation of knowledge, experience, and wisdom? How is it that the way we're wired or the way we've been raised, or how does it impact? Like, I know that even for me, depending even on the state that I'm in any given time, like if I'm activated, because I too have trauma that I'm still working through, right? Like, so if I'm in an activated state, I don't hear things even the same. I don't even take in information, let alone transmit it into knowledge or, experience if I'm in one state versus if I'm in another state, right? So that question just has struck me as having a potential probably for another whole hour's worth of conversation.
Another statement was a big step is learning how to respond rather than react.
Ooh. Putting that down in my journal.
One of repeat your question.
The question is, in what ways do personal beliefs and biases? That's
right. Yes.
Impact?
What came to mind when you were reading that was religion. Right? When you either have something that comes across life that really shakes you and your belief or your faith. If you're down and out and you were really questioning faith, there's a client I was working with who was a priest for 40 years. And in our sessions together, much like what Primal Connect was talking about, helping this man of the cloth work through his shame as a human, as a man versus a man of the cloth, but he put aside his identity for the work of faith, which I understand. But he left him behind, and getting to walk through trust building with him and holding space with him and sharing and connecting and building our rapport to create a space where he felt vulnerable enough to submit comfortably and safely with someone who was competent to do it. At the end of our time together, he had a big conflict with, well, what does this mean about God? Is God angry with me? And he really dove deep into that. We spoke for about 2 hours to really dissect, well, what does God want from me? And at the end of it, it was determined that God wants anything he experiences as a human to help him feel fulfilled and nourished. And anything that takes away from that is not what God wants. And then I walked him through our process, which is a long process, right? We have our conversations, we have our reflection, we have our negotiations. And by the time we got to the end of that experience, was any of that take away from me? He said, no. And it was like, well, isn't that what God wants for you? So you have to really sit and process and reframe, who am I as a man versus who am I as a man of the cloth? And there was a lot of talk around everything we talked about tonight. Really, really intense stuff.
Yeah.
That's what popped into my mind when you read that question.
Cool.
Jax.
Yeah, it just what you were just saying just sort of like made me think of like fear and how like your lived experiences a lot of times cause fear in one way or another, as well as a lot of other things. But I feel like fear can really limit how you're taking in information, because you can know that you're going to have a parachute when you're jumping out of a plane. That's not going to make you believe that you're not going to die when you hit the ground. So I think fear really limits how you take in knowledge.
Awesome, Jax. Yes. Oh my goodness.
Jax mic dropping all night tonight.
we have Tango.
Yeah, the bias also, I think, in you say religion and personal bias, but I think also looking at just I think Josh, you said you have ADHD. I have family members also who have gone through and challenges there. And as a reference, there's a great small book, Secrets of a Buccaneer Scholar, that talk about how you break free from the teachers telling you it's not you're failing when you're not. They're just not showing you how you learn right. So the bias of those showing you how they learned, expecting you how to learn the same way, can really impact people. So I think understanding the bias of other people's imprints on you and then removing them allows you to move forward.
Wow.
Tango, dude, listen, hold on.
Oh, here he comes.
Listen, man. I got diagnosed earlier this year, and it was like I was angry for 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, angry with people because I said it, and they were like, "Well, didn't you know?" It was like, no, I didn't know, because what happened, it took me back down to grade school when I would have trouble with math. And it's like, how are all these knuckleheads getting it? And I can't. I'm exaggerating the wording, but I was angry because then I was angry with myself and I felt dumb. And it carried over into my 20s when I tried to go back to school and the math wasn't working. So when I finally got that video from a friend, an acquaintance, and he sent it, and I looked at it, and I was like, all the pieces fell together. I need the name of that book, please.
Yeah, it was a really cool
Secrets
title.
of a Buccaneer Scholar, and it's about a guy who I'll tell real quick. He dropped out of grade school and ended up writing programming for Apple computers because he was taking a test, and it was like a physics test, and he did so well in the first answer he didn't answer the rest of the questions. The Secrets of a Buccaneer Scholar. It's a small little book.
I like it.
It is amazing. And I'll say, you're not alone. Once people realize this, it's amazing. I have a son. He was in 8th grade and couldn't read at a 2nd grade level. 3 years later, he's National Honor Society because we found the way that he learned, and we changed how he got taught so that now he can pick up, he learns, and it's not a failure of anybody except for a failure of his parents, of us, for not finding earlier what works for him and giving him that self-advocacy. So once you learned it, having that awareness of it, that's the first step. So congratulations on getting that awareness, not letting it overwhelm you. It's understandable. Anger is there because of the frustration, but once you get started on that path, man, it just takes off like wildfire. So keep on it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've already reframed it to be the superpower that it is.
Thank you, Tango.
With that, we're almost out of time. V, your hand is up, and I'm going to read something real quick. V, give me 1 second. From Primal says, some religions use shame as a tool of control, whereas others see it as a barrier to enlightenment. And then Jack shared of a late last year diagnosis, and was very frustrating as well. And then the title, Secrets of a Buccaneer Scholar. We see our reality through a lens of perception as we heal and leave our love to love ourselves, so the universe starts to respond positively to us. Thank you, Primal, for that. V.
Just want to tell you that ADHD is nothing but a coping mechanism. So if you were to have your perfect twin raised in a different scenario, different environment, they are likely not going to develop ADHD. So it is the trauma that is holding you, and you responded to life by creating this deficit. So if you allow that trauma to define you, then sure, you have it. But I think living in fear through a diagnosis as such is just limiting. So just wanted to tell you that it's just your superpower.
Thank you so much.
That's awesome, V.
Thank you so much. We need you back in New York.
I will be there soon.
I've sometimes, I mean, it's a complex topic, and I might upset some people, but ADHD, in my view, is a symptom of complex PTSD. And when we learn how to handle the trauma, the shame, the stress of living in what are sometimes or very often narcissistic households and families, we can then start to dismantle what you might call the symptoms and the underlying causes, and people recover quite positively. And it's about teaching people how to slow it down. You know, I do a lot of work with military families, and you know, there are some families that live at stress levels that would kill a horse. They really do.
Raise your hand if you've experienced that.
Experienced what?
The stress. No, we it's intense, Primal. We are running out of time. I have to wrap this up, but I really appreciate everything you've shared tonight and everyone that's spoken up. Thank you so much for all the
thanks for everyone for being here. It's really great.
All the knowledge and wisdom shared tonight was incredible.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for letting me
come join us next week.
What's next week's topic?
I don't know. I don't have it off the top of my head because I was in this one.
Oh, wait, I could grab it real quick. Ready?
Okay, grab it real quick.
Ready? Watch timing.
So as we do that, we're always open to taking donations. We're always open to connecting with folks offline as well. Should you guys like to connect with us and
yeah, reach back out to us however it is you got to us, whether you picked us up on Eventbrite or I texted you earlier or through the website. What is it?
And next week's discussion topic is creativity and creative expression.
Oh man.
So come back. Hang out with us.
Come next week. Both of you come next week. Let's do this again. This is fun.
Everyone, thank you so much and have a good
one, guys.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Kat.